Hey guys, welcome back to the Stuff of Legend. My name is D'Lo. For those of you guys who don't already know me, and I wanted to pay tribute to a man who very much changed my life. I would not be who I am today. I would not be doing what I'm doing today. I would not have gone down the paths in life that I had chosen if it were not for this man who so greatly impacted me and impacted so many countless individuals in our lifetime over the last nearly 100 years. The man's name is Stan Lee, and he is the stuff of legend. He is, uh, that word gets thrown around a lot, and I use it in my channel title. And the reason I had picked that name, the stuff of legend, is because to me, a legend was always uh, a tale, some sort of an epic story that it brought about excitement, it brought about inspiration. Um, it didn't have to be true. Some legends are true, and in the case of Stan Lee, he leaves behind a legacy that it has earned him the title of legend. Um, in the truest sense, our kids, our grandkids, they're going to be hearing the stories that Stan Lee told. He created what we now know as modern mythology, and it's very odd. It's a very strange thing. Today um, you guys know I'm quite obsessed with not only Marvel and DC and comic books in general, but all things legendary, all things that are, like Transformers or Aliens or Power Rangers, Godzilla, anything that is um, inspiring, anything that is exciting and it makes you want to get up out of your chair and start punching a bag or doing some push-ups or pull-ups or go for a run or take up sword fighting or learn how to weld or whatever it is that it inspires you to do. That's what these legends are. That's what these modern mythologies are, whatever that is for you. And you know s- uh, I didn't expect it to be so difficult today, hearing about Stan Lee's passing. um, At first, I didn't believe it. I got the text in the morning, and I was at work, so I did not have time to verify the source myself. But I had instead replied to somebody and said, "Hey, I'm at work. It's very busy. Can you verify this source?" And the person I had texted about that was Ryan from Nerdy Blurb TV. He's a friend, and he does very similar what I do, uh, talk about movies and TV and um, all kinds of what we call nerdy things, what we call legendary things. There's many words you can use to describe these things, even despite the fact that a lot of this stuff isn't even nerdy anymore. I mean, it just happens to be fantasy that people openly discuss and get excited about into their adult life. Um, it is in a sense nerdy, but Stan Lee changed the game. Nowadays it's not even cool to be someone who doesn't geek out over something. You know, everybody has that thing, but um, as the day went on, it was very hard because um, I was just having a very busy day, and it didn't click. Like it didn't stick. Because most of the time, and I kind of feel a little bit bad about this, but not really. Like most celebrity deaths don't bother me, and I feel a little bit, I guess, calloused in that way. But I think maybe it's just disconnected. I think, but with Stan Lee, right around 3 p.m., close to 4, it was like 3:30 or something. I had gotten out of a big meeting, and it all of a sudden, I was by myself after a long period of busyness. I look at my phone and I had, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it was somewhere between, 100 and 120, 130. It was a lot of messages, text messages, from people telling me, "Oh my gosh, have you heard? Stanley passed." And hey, like on Instagram, people were messaging me, and Facebook messaging me, and altogether, I had quite a few messages. And I think that's when it kind of clicked that, my entire life, I've looked up to the heroes and the characters and the stories that Stan Lee has told, like whether it be his creations of Spider-Man, or if it's the Incredible Hulk, or the X-Men. Um I've been so deeply impacted by those tales, tales of, um usually it's someone that is normal, mild-mannered, usually a fairly okay dude who then comes into power, and he has to learn how to handle himself with that new power. In the case of Spider-Man, there's tragic consequences for not taking uh, care of the power that is bestowed upon you: self-control, meekness, restraint, and also, of course, um, with great power comes great responsibility. And these are life lessons that I was able to learn at a very young age because of Stan Lee and because of the stories that he told, that he created. It was through his imagination that so many people like myself were inspired. Um, a lot of people don't understand, why people like myself enjoy comic books and movies and TV, and why we get so into this. But I think it's because there was an impression put on us at a very young age that we could be better than we are, that we could be called to a purpose that is greater than ourselves. And I think, it's it all flooded to me as soon as I had looked down at my phone and saw that I had a lot of messages from people, not just that I know personally right now, but people that I've known over the years, and people that I haven't spoken to in a while, even reaching out to me because as soon as they heard that Stan Lee had passed, they thought of me. And the course of my life, becoming, a YouTuber, this last year, dedicating at least one video every single week, the hours that go into that, whether it's a live stream and I can sit down and plug away and just and talk, or if it's going to be a pre-recorded video with a script and some images thrown on it, whatever it is, there's time in a week that I've invested into this. But it didn't start this year. Just the YouTubing started basically this year. But I've been doing this my entire life. I've been talking to people about my theories, and how, what the next movie is going to be, what it looks like it's going to be, what did that end credit scene mean, who was that villain, when there was a pedestrian and they said the name, who was that person, whose brother, husband, cousin, sister, wife, brother, like whatever it is, what's the relation, what's the correlation, what does that imply for the next film, where are they going? um like, I was able to break all those things down for so many people over so many years that when this happened, my phone blew up. And that really clicked it for me that Stanley was so important to me that my life followed his creation. It followed his imagination and his dream. And even though I didn't end up doing exactly what he does, I don't per se, I don't write comics and stories, but what I do is I tell stories. I became a storyteller like he is. I like to tell people in long form, um, some a message. I like to convey something. I like to talk. I like to communicate. And this is, something that I've recently discovered I was born to do. I'm a communicator. and I'm getting better at it. I'm learning to say like and significantly less. I'm learning to speak less like a millennial and more like a professional. And it comes with practice, it comes with time. But Stanley was the master of words, he was the master of imagination, and he was, now I realize, the master of inspiration, because I didn't start working out through junior high and high school until I had seen Lou Ferrigno ripping his shirt off in the live action form TV show The Incredible Hulk, and Bill Bixby getting to witness the selflessness, the self-sacrifice that he did. Mild mannered. At They adapted it to David Banner. It's Bruce Banner, same guy, but they didn't like the name Bruce at the time. Um, but David Banner at the time, being a mild-mannered doctor, physician, scientist who was skilled and wanting to help people. He wanted to help people, but then an accident which altered his body chemistry. And I'm quoting here. I'm quoting this entire thing for you from the actual TV show. Altered his biochemistry, and through gamma radiation, he became the Incredible Hulk. And they told the story in the form of Jekyll and Hyde. But the interesting thing was that it's a superhero TV show that focuses on a tragedy, an active, ongoing tragedy of a man that's not dead, that can't be killed, but he is concerned for the safety and well being of others. He wishes nobody any harm whatsoever, but yet he is cursed to bear this Mr. Hyde. He is Dr. Jekyll, and he bears a Mr. Hyde, and he can never be close to a woman. He wants to settle down with a number of different people as he moves on from town to town, sacrificing a potential life, the dreams that he could have. He lays those things down for the betterment of others, for his fellow man. And he does this over and over and over again, rushing into fires and crumbling buildings, and in the way of trains and trucks and cars, and you name it. He gets right there in the heat of it as Dr. Banner, and then transforms into the Hulk to preserve his own life and save the situation, whatever it is. I learned a lot from those things. And even from one of my favorites is the X-Men. Many of you guys love the X-Men. But one thing that I learned from watching the X-Men growing up, the TV show and then eventually the movies, um, was that it doesn't matter what your ideology is, whatever your ideology is in the world, your worldview. Um, at the end of the day, and this is my take on politics. If you guys follow my podcast, Bro Found Podcast, that's bro with a B, Bro Found Podcast. Um, the way that I see it, no matter what your worldview is, for the most part, most people, they just want the world to be better. They just want to see a better tomorrow. And I think that there's depending on your circumstance, your education, um, the amount of uh, perspectives you've gathered. I think that most people, they just want to make the world a better place, and they just see a different path to get to that different version of a better world. You might think that a better world looks blue. I might think a better world looks red, but and the path to getting there might be through like airbrush or watercolor. I'm so sorry. It's kind of tough to talk. I've been a little bit emotional today. But it doesn't matter, like what your take is. We're better off together. We're better off coming together. And Charles Xavier and Magneto they had the same plan, a better tomorrow for mutants. But one thought it would be better to coexist with humans as equals, and one thought it was better that they dominate, because they didn't believe that it was possible to coexist equally. Um, and they both respected each other. They both were willing to hear each other out. At the end of the day, they still disagreed, but Professor X and Charles Xavier, I'm sorry, Professor X, who is Charles Xavier, and Magneto, Eric Lenscher, they were still great friends. And Magneto wasn't the villain of the story, by the way. He was just another guy with a different perspective, and I think that that is a perspective that is so healthy for people nowadays who sit on either side of a political aisle or who disagree about different types of politics or social standings, classes, or whatever. Like if you feel one way about one issue socially, and then someone thinks a whole different thing. Why can't we have these discussions? We don't have to come to a total agreement, but we can have discussions and we can still walk away knowing that you're still a person, that you're still somebody that I can care about. You're still someone that is a brother. You're and I think to ignore that, is not only is it foolish and it's dangerous to our society, but if we can't have these types of discussions, if we can't come together and realize that we're stronger and better together, um, and that the person that disagrees with us politically or socially or whatever, religious or things like that, they're not your enemy, um, for the most part, right? I mean, as long as they're not trying to hurt you, actually hurt you, not with like words. Words don't hurt, but um, I think that there's so many lessons to be learned, and I think at the end of the day, Stanley was the grandfather that I never really got to know. You know, I always live very far from my relatives. I was with my immediate family, of course, but like grandparents, I've never lived close to my grandparents, and I only got a chance to see some of them, never all of them at the same time. So we would alternate, every couple Christmases. There would be a Christmas at our place, and then the next, like Thanksgiving, or like Thanksgiving at our place, and Thanksgiving at one set of grandparents' house, and then one at the other, and then ours. So like every 2 or 3 years, I'd get to see, um, you know, one of the sets of grandparents. But it was very difficult too because there wasn't a whole lot of connection, uh, just because of the nature of the relationships of my grandparents. My grandparents had separated by divorce, and so there was even fewer, like there was distance between that as well, because even on my mom's side, there was visiting this side of her family 1 year, and then the next was visiting my dad's, and the next was visiting the other side of my mom's. So it was just a big rotating door of not really getting to know anybody. Um, and I regret that. I wish that there was more time for that. But Stanley ended up serving as the person in my life that when I was young and I didn't know much about the world, he was there to continuously tell me stories through TV, through books, through video games, whatever, movies, and all of the different media that he used to reach people like myself, kids like myself. Um, to inspire us, to be strong, to be powerful men and women, to have confidence, but also to use that for good, not for personal gain, but to help people, to be a hero, and to respect authority. To have respect for authority, to have respect for your fellow man, and to look out for the good of all. And I think that that's so critically important. And it broke my heart, once it finally hit me that uh, he was always there with me, in a sense, like just like he was there with you guys, telling you stories and inspiring you to be better than you are, better than you were. Um, and it's just very much a wake up call to the legend that Stan is and has been to so many of us. Um, I'm gonna miss him. I'm gonna miss him. I'll probably end up talking about him a lot more after this. They say you never know what you've got until it's gone, and I do know that the world was waking up to appreciate Stan Lee as he was drawing closer to the end. Um, I'm just really grateful that I got to know him in that grandfatherly way of hearing those uh, fantastic war stories, you know, and hearing what the world was like back in the '60s and um, in the '50s, and all the lessons that came from all that, you know, and having pride in your country and not backing down. You know, I'm proud to be an American. You know, I learned that from Stan and Captain America, and um, you know, there's so much that I have gleaned from his work, and I will forever be grateful for um, the lessons, the legends, and the legacy that is there now for myself and for my kids and my kids' kids. And you know, there's only so many names out there that you can mention, and a library of information dumps into everybody's brains when you say it. There's C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, George Lucas, Dr. Seuss, Walt Disney, and Stan Lee. And that's just those off the top of my head who have done work similar to this, but there is nobody like Stan Lee. And the impact that he has left on the world will never be forgotten. Uh, I think that's all that I have to say. But I thank you guys for listening. I thank you guys so much for supporting this channel. I know this is a very different video, but I felt like it was important to say, and thank you for letting me get it off my chest. You guys are the best. Thank you. You guys have a great rest of your day. I will see you guys next time, right here on The Stuff of Legend. Excelsior! My best, worst Stanley impression. Love you, man.